I'm not going to read Svetlana's whole bio. You can read it in the newsletter. It's very long and very impressive. Critically acclaimed as a passionate pianist and scholar, Svetlana Belsky is a highly regarded performer, noted for her remarkable rapport with audiences and stylistic versatility. I'm just going to read a few things. Dr. Belsky won the 2019 American Prize in Piano Performance for her earlier recording of Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. She has toured Europe, East Asia, Canada, and has toured throughout the United States. She is considered an authority on the music and writings and pedagogical legacy of Ferruccio Busoni. She was born in Ukraine, most of her education in the United States, first as a student of Emilio del Rosario, and receiving her bachelor's and master's degrees at Peabody Conservatory in the studio of Anne Shine, and her doctorate at Manhattan School of Music with Nina Svetlanova. Dr. Belsky served as the Director of Piano Studies at the University of Chicago for 15 years and is in great demand as a lecturer, masterclass guest teacher, and competition adjudicator. We are so lucky to have her today. Please welcome Svetlana Belsky.
Thank you. That was a little embarrassing.
Yeah, so I want to say a few words about the repertoire, and it's sort of an answer to many people, teachers who talked to me about it last year. So first of all, I want to remind that according to our tradition, we have 4 levels, no age limits, which is very different from other similar competitions, because you know that the students, they develop as a pianist at different speed at different age, so it's okay if 10, 12-year-old plays level A repertoire and vice versa, so that's not judged, okay? Now we have a required piece, 20th century contemporary music, and then the second piece they have to play is one of the choices, and we offer 4 different pieces from 4 different periods in music history. That's the rules, but a lot of teachers, they don't read these rules very thoroughly, so I decided to remind. Now, the next thing is not a rule, but I try to make the repertoire more interesting, so I try to pick the theme for each year. So this year I included music by Russian composers in every level. And also, what's new this year is that because of many different events happening in April, we decided to move our competition to March. And it's pretty close to the Sonata Festival. So we included a movement of sonata or sonatina in every level. Usually the students who are good and interested in participating in the competitions, they're usually good in all the competitions, right? So they can prepare one piece for both the Sonata Festival and our competition. What else? As usually, we don't require the students to bring a regional score. So teachers, if you're interested, let us know. We can send you the copies, and so that's not a problem anymore. We still have 2 judges per room, and we're planning to do it again in Fine Arts Building as the previous couple of years. And please call us with all the questions, all the requests. Me or Pat will be happy to answer as usual, okay? And so now we're looking forward to Svetlana's presentation.
Thank you. So as usual, Regina does an amazing job of selecting repertoire. If you're like me and you get sick and tired of teaching the same thing every year, this is some really good stuff. So on every level, there is something off the beaten path. If your student or you like something unusual, there's something for you here. But I particularly enjoyed the whole Russian school of piano playing component here, since I was brought up in it and I still teach the skills. So I think the skills we're thinking about, everybody teaches them. It's just that the Russian school of music concentrates on them a little bit more and for younger students. So I will be pointing those out as we go. So let's see if this thing works. Okay, it worked a second ago. Yes, so we're going to start with the level A, and the required piece is, this is a little bit too high. Can we move it a little down because it's missing top of the, no? I mean, the whole top of the presentation is missing.
I'll go, yeah.
Anyway, so I mean, it has the guy's name. So this is Alexander Goedeke, who, despite the funky name, is in fact a Russian composer. So, and what lovely mustaches he has. I mean, really. So this piece is a very adorable little miniature with various problems and issues pedagogically speaking. So let me play a little bit of it, and then we'll discuss it. Very strange. And it's fine. We'll be missing the dates of birth of a lot of these composers, which is okay. So let us then discuss this little piece and what I think are its specific pedagogical challenges. So the elephant in the room here is, of course, always the dotted rhythm. I have no idea why it is absolutely impossible to teach the mathematical concept, which is really straightforward, to little kids, right? I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3 should not be a big problem. The real problem, of course, is that we don't play like that, right? We always either prolong the long note or shorten it depending on the effect that we would like the piece to have, and explaining that math is completely impossible. So I usually revert to my favorite monkey hear, monkey do method of teaching because, you know, it works. So besides the dotted rhythms, what we really would like in this piece is a lot of different expressive characters. I hope you heard some of that in my playing. Some gestures should be very soft and melodic, others should be very sprightly and bright and jumping, and that requires the use of staccato, which is another concept that you will find the Russian composers concentrate on a very great deal. I just completed doing little video presentations for all the pieces of Tchaikovsky's children's album, and I found by the time I got to the 5th piece, I've repeated myself 5 times talking about how to achieve a real staccato, because each of the pieces seems to require it. But we'll talk about the staccato and my idea of how to actually physically produce it a little bit later, if you don't mind. But anyways, playing expressively is I think, the most important technique to teach, and this is a good piece for it indeed. But let's not get stuck on this guy, because the next piece is, as you can see from the picture, is Johann Sebastian Bach, and this is one of his little preludes. I think this is by far, the hardest piece on this level, because of the really great variety of pedagogical issues involved here. So once again, let me play it, and then we'll talk about it. All the time. So in this piece, things to consider is that this piece, of course, is a minuet, right? Which means that some of the tempos one hears, like, just don't work. It doesn't sound like a dance. It also means, since we're talking about a dance, that there are probably two dancers, and they respond to each other in very beautiful ways. As you can see from my cut-off little pictures, there's like he said, she said, she does something, he responds. It should never ever sound like melody and accompaniment, right? Then a lot of the expression here is achieved by the appoggiaturas, which are showing up nicely on the screen in yellow. Did you hear me really pop these things? These things represent size. They do so from before Bach, after Bach, and really up to modern day. So we should always make sure that the appoggiatura note itself, the dissonant note, is louder than its resolution. And our problems are not over here, because we have some really difficult sort of holds, like this business. To do it properly, you get what is known as a Corelli clash. I mean, that's kind of yummy. But most kids pick up their finger. Also, you have to finger very intelligently in order to be able to, hold everything properly. So, as I said, this piece is the hardest by far on this level. If you're going to assign it now, I would say like today or like yesterday, really. Okay, so now we're talking about our sonatina, and this is our beloved Carl Czerny, who we do love because he came up with all those wonderful fingerings for scales and arpeggios that we still use. He also came up with some really bad Bach editions. This is not the time to talk about it, but there cannot be a single talk that I do not throw shade on Czerny's Bach edition. So this is the one. Okay, so adorable little sonatina. In our scale books, in one way or another. So the trick here is charm, wit, elegance, humor, and variety. So did you notice how I tried to be very specific about what kind of a staccato I'm doing? So here, I'm literally lifting carefully with my wrist because this staccato, which is cut off here, is under a slur, right? So it's a slower staccato, whereas this business is a finger staccato, and I think the difference is very important. Another great difficulty in pieces, especially of this period, is the balance between the hands. So here the left hand is sitting in what is now our kind of loudest, juicy register. But for Czerny, it wasn't. On Czerny's piano, this was actually the soft bit, and this was the loud bit. So if you sat down to play it on his piano and used exactly the same amount of force in both hands, it would have come out perfect. On our piano, we're getting, which is unattractive, but it is time to start training independence of the hands already in this period. The romantic piece here, the little folk song is very rarely played, and I think the biggest issue with it is that kids have no idea what's actually going on in it. They're not used to the concept of somebody telling a story with some kind of an accompaniment. So I just pulled up a picture of a folk storyteller. I mean, think Homer, actually, all the way back to that. But I found something from a recent, so here we go. Probably isn't going to do it for us, right? Did you notice how I used my arm in playing this melody? I actually didn't have nearly the sort of rounded fingers we hound students about. I prefer to play on the cushy part of my finger to create a more beautiful sound and use my arm to kind of pull the melody along. If you rotate in the direction of the melody, your arm does all the phrasing, and you don't have to add too much on top of that. In the con brio part, we have a quite different issue. We have not just dotted rhythms, heaven save us, but we also have those teeny tiny little rests, which your student is not going to do the first time they bring this back to a lesson. You're going to get this. I guarantee it, right? Because throwing your hand up like that is frightening. However, it gives us the right timing, so we have to do it. We meet these little rests all over Chopin mazurkas and many other pieces as well, so might as well learn how to do it right away. There's nothing to fear. If you splat, you splat. I mean, worst things can happen. All right, so the last piece on this is our most fascinating Russian piece. What?
It looks like a few of the slides have like little colors that pop up and the animation, so just click it a few times and you'll get through.
Aha! Okay, so Samuel Makarpar is actually a Ukrainian composer. Nowadays we make it, we make a to-do about that. And the author of some absolutely marvelous, marvelous children's pieces. So this particular one, it doesn't look very difficult, but it presents all kinds of concepts that we normally don't teach on this level. Let me play a little bit and we will discuss. have to happen for this to work? So first of all, there is una corda, sempre una corda. So hopefully the kid's tall enough to actually reach the thing, right? And then the right pedal is marked throughout, but you have to be judicious about it. A lot of the music sits very low, and you're going to get a big old mush. So if your child is ready, it's time to teach half pedal or partial pedal or flutter pedal, which is very difficult. The most important thing here is the concept of super legato. So we know legato comes in all kinds of varieties. I mean, you can have this kind of, technically that's a legato, but it doesn't work here. So the sort of legato we're looking for is where the notes are slightly overlapped. That's called super legato, and that works beautifully and brilliantly here. But once again, we have to forget about beautiful round fingers, flatten out quite a bit, and again, use the arm to pull the melody through the whole entire phrase. So the reason we do this, of course, is because our fingers are all different lengths, bless them. So with rounded fingers, all the fingers magically become the same length, and they fit in the same place on the key. That's great. If you flatten out, suddenly we're back to a problem where like the pinky and thumb can't even reach, right? So if we just rotate towards the short fingers, that problem is eliminated. But more than that, our playing becomes much more flexible, alive, has a sort of internal micro timing that I'm sure the composer meant. And so that instead of adding artificial sounding rubato, all you do is you move your wrist in a natural kind of way, and suddenly the music sings and dances. Very big. So with that, let's move on to level B, where the required piece is my favorite piece from this whole entire repertoire. This little etude is just so very much fun. Goes on like that, and then there's a beautiful middle section. In that it sounds super difficult, but isn't. It's also full of repeats. So once you conquer each individual technique that we'll discuss in a moment, it's repeated throughout the piece. And you literally have to learn 2 measures at a time. So the yellow business over here is rotational technique. We do not want, God forbid, right? So what we want is the thumb that's basically stationary, and the notes which are melody coming a little bit from the air. Rotational technique. This is used by every single composer, certainly of the classical period, but also Mr. Nakada over here. And it's important to teach. In my experience, it takes a while, because what a student wants to do is they want to rotate symmetrically. But the whole point of rotational technique is that the unmoving finger is used as a fulcrum. And you can teach a little physics while you go with the whole fulcrum business. And then 4 measures later, we have a completely different technique now, where suddenly your fingers do work, but your arm does a lot more, because otherwise you're going to get kind of very flat and unattractive, bangy, boxy expression. I don't think that's fun at all. Right? So we're going to look carefully at the slurs, and we're going to pick up carefully at the ends of the slurs. And then we have this, which you'd be amazed how many students cannot do. I mean, they literally can't do that. So you can suggest that they practice this away from the piano, on any fun surface, until they get it. right? Because the notes actually aren't very hard, but the rhythm does get people. And of course, the middle section has the usual issues with we want a beautiful sound in the right hand, and we want extremely soft and controlled left hand, which again sits in a fairly loud register, but it is not. By this age, we hope that that particular concept has already been absorbed. I mean, we hope, we pray, we try, right? So then we have the Baroque piece to this level, which is really fun, by Henry Purcell. So Purcell is best known to his vocal works, of course, but he does have a bunch of keyboard stuff, and this little guy is basically an invention. So I sort of marked up the invention a bit here. Very warmed up right now, and I am getting caught in my own fingers quite a bit. It doesn't feel quite as pianistic as some other pieces might be. So what I would concentrate on in teaching this piece, there you go, is the actual structure. In other words, decide what the subject is as you would in a Bach invention, and try to give it a sound quality or a character or an articulation that belongs just to the subject, right? So I'm saying it's a very active, very fingery kind of a legato, almost a non-legato. And then that is different. That is a different kind of a smoother legato. And now we have a much more interesting interpretation rather than, you know, 2 long pages worth of taka 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 taka, which are not that much fun to listen to. The sonata, I should say, is a very interesting piece indeed, at least historically speaking. You notice how I chose the composer's pictures judiciously over here, because this thing is KV7, which means it's probably not even written by Wolfgang. It's probably written by Papa, whose picture is down there. Especially since this piece actually, I was driving Regina crazy. I couldn't find it online because KV7 is a violin sonata. There it is, right? And so it is possible to sort of either take the violin part completely out, since it's not obbligato here, or sort of work it in, which was done in this particular edition. Of course, there were practical musicians at the time. If you've got a family of genius children who play piano and violin, you have to, you know, you kind of have to provide them with pieces for both. So, if you're sick and tired of, you know, this is a good option. No, you know, no dynamics, no articulation, no nothing. So it's, as usual in the period, up to the performer to come up with what they like. So I hope you heard some of my decisions. So if things repeat, they can be echo. You know, first one loud, second one soft, or perhaps the first one can crescendo and the second one can be diminuendo, or the whole thing can be crescendo. There's so many options The important thing is charm, sweetness. Again, older Mozart said that his ideal of what piano should sound like is music should flow like oil. So, yeah, so let's flow like oil. Adorable piece, a wonderful discovery. Our romantic piece here is Russian. The composer, this was a discovery to me. I always knew him as an author.
Yeah.
I mean, he wrote one of the most important and fascinating works in Russian literature. But look at his dates. Only the good die
Do
young.
you know how he died?
No, I have no idea.
Okay, I have to take 1 minute.
Okay.
He worked at the Russian embassy in Tehran,
Oh God.
and there was some uprising. I don't know. They held one group of people. They hid them in the building, and then they were all killed.
Oh great. Oh.
And then, so all the Russian workers of the embassy were killed, and then the Shah, Iranian Shah, as a gesture of apologizing, he sent a diamond to the Russian side. It's the biggest diamond in Russia until now. You could see it in.
Oh wow.
in
That's
some
great.
museums. Yeah. So he was a multi-talented person.
Yeah,
He was a
extremely.
friend of Pushkin. He was a poet. He was an author. He was an amateur composer. But he worked as a diplomat.
That's just great. So basically, plus ça change, plus ça ne change pas. So the more things change, the more they stay the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. So let's take a look at his little waltz. If you add artificial rubato, it will sound like my teacher made me do it. If you use your arm, it sounds like the music made me do it, which is, of course, a much more natural way of playing. Obviously, this is for the romantic in your studio. The next piece. The next piece is for somebody in your studio who likes things that are very weird. I mean, it's a hilarious fun piece. I mean, we've all talked about extra pieces before. This one was new to me, and I was reading and going, like, seriously? That's so fun. This is so weird. I mean, a prelude and fugue-ish, right? Okay, so let me play at least a little bit of each one because they are just wonderful. the trick to teaching something like this is to treat it the way you would treat a fugue or an invention or whatever, which is take your subject, which is treated in interesting ways here, and analyze the subject, and then give it a sound and a feeling all of its own, contrasting to other material. Okay? I'm very happy to send you PDFs so you don't have to take pictures, or anyone else who is interested. So with that, let us move on to level C. And here, the required piece is a Bartók sonatine. Wonderful piece, which I'm not going to play because there is a recording. There is an actual recording by Bartók. Let's see if I can get it to play. Well, yeah, but Bartók, there's something different when Bartók plays his own music.
Oh, yeah.
So I listened to a couple of people, and what he does is just very different. So his sense of rhythm is so absolutely unbelievable in this piece. So everybody else, so we're all kind of burdened by 200 years of romantic performance practice, and we do everything in a romantic-y sort of a way. He doesn't. He allows it to be the sort of a folk piece that it's meant to be. So no idea. I just did a presentation a week ago with the same exact link, which worked fine. So I'll have to experiment some more. So basically just listen to the recording and you will see what is needed here. And I will play the next piece. Which is the Domenico Scarlatti Sonata. So there's not much to say about Scarlatti sonatas in general, except overall stuff to think about is that, Bach writes always sort of to the glory of God, right? And Scarlatti writes to have fun. For us to have, for the performer to have fun, for the listener to have fun, and I think we have to approach the music in that spirit. I mean, they're exact contemporaries, but in terms of their worldview, you can't be much more different. I trolled around internet to find different different editions, and a lot of them have interesting ideas for dynamics. Again, we can use the same dynamic contrast I discussed in the Mozart piece before. They can be echo, they can be building, you can do whatever you want. The important thing is to avoid editions which are over-edited to within an inch of their lives. So take a look on the right there at the Longo edition. So of course Longo is a very big deal because he's one of the first people who cataloged Scarlatti sonatas, so you'd think he'd be trustworthy, but he's not. So look at those slurs I was pointing out. These guys. Now these are original, they mean things. Did you notice I was just holding the whole chord down? It's a thing. I mean, Bach does that, and we obey, right? Except look at on the right at the Longo. He doesn't obey. He just writes in staccatos for no apparent reason whatsoever. So you have to be very cautious. I usually do not recommend text editions, particularly for younger students, because it freaks them out to not have anything there. But you need to find an edition that is at least somewhat scholarly and up to date. Just saying. Because I know when I'm judging, I hear stuff coming out. I know it's not the student's fault that they're doing things that are so far outside the historical performance practice ideas. It's probably what they've read in the book, but they should just have a better book. That's all I'm going to say about that. So our next sonata is by Haydn, and what an absolute delight is this piece. Again, this one is all about fun. And more of the same. How absolutely darling and adorable. But hard to do correctly because of all of the articulation over here. All these little slurs. They all mean things. So if you go, we've got a completely different piece. So normally when we see two-note slurs, there are two ways we can play them. Right? The traditional way we teach the little ones is wrist down and up. Trouble is that wrist is a really slow joint, and this takes forever. And so it's much better to reserve this technique for things that are slow and expressive. For something like this, you can do the same down and technique, but you can hinge from the elbow, which remarkably is a much faster joint. I mean, you can do this up the buzzer. I mean, there's no problem with that. At any tempo, right? So, sorry, what am I playing? I'm exaggerating wildly, of course. But a little bit of that upfeeding from the elbow is really all we need. And then once we come to the 16th note, we can make a decision. Are these guys legato? Or are they kind of a beautiful little articulated détaché sound? Perhaps they're both. Perhaps when the key changes, maybe they become something else. What fun, right? So we would like to avoid having the exact same sound quality for the entire sonata. I mean, that would be boring and not fun. This is another one of those pieces which are not about the mysteries of the universe, but all about, we love this instrument, we love music, we enjoy playing. Okay. So the Russian piece on this level is by another composer who is new to me, Victor Kalin. Don't know anything about him, but another one who just died remarkably young. I mean, it's just so incredibly sad. So this piece, it would be just like a normal little nocturne-like beautiful piece if it were not for the time signature, which, as you notice, is 5/4. It sounds so natural in 5, but I have a feeling that this is where kids are going to get stuck. Otherwise, lecture number 4 about phrase with your arm, not with your fingers, and all shall be well, right? As for rubato, obviously we need quite a bit here, but you have to be careful that you don't rubato so much you end up playing in 6. That seems like an appropriate word. The final piece, and I'm glad now that I did include a link to the composer playing it. It doesn't work, but the recording does exist by Federico Mampu playing his own set of paysages. I wasn't nearly as enamored with it as I was with the Bartok. So I'm going to play the thing for you myself. So the fountain and the clock. This is a piece for somebody who likes to be, off the beaten path, unusual, fun stuff. You have to be able to create an incredible atmosphere in this thing. Also, it is so slow that I think for some kids that may be difficult. Maintaining focus through a very slow phrase is not an easy task.
To click the.
Oh, so sorry. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
There he is. I also like the painting of him. The main difficulty, at least for me, is that the stretches are humongous, much bigger than my miniature Lukian. So make sure that you assign it to somebody who's not going to hurt themselves trying to stretch these things, right? Since we don't know what age any music is. So it looks easy to play, but it's filled with tricks, and as I said, I can't reach a thing. So which brings us, however, to level D, and to the great Russian composer Dmitri Shostakovich, and the three fantastic dances, which are probably the funnest things he ever wrote. So, of course, Shostakovich wrote many serious things, but I think all of his piano small pieces are tongue-in-cheek. Tongue so deep in cheek, you need major surgery to remove it. So, and these pieces all have, I think, little jokes in them, in my opinion. So the first one, all three of them are dances. So you have to kind of ask yourself, who is doing the dancing? So let me play a little bit of it, and then we can discuss number one. person, whoever that is, which it has very angular rhythms, probably overdotted, with those little rests we discussed earlier. You have to come out, or it doesn't work, right? And then we have another character, which is far smoother and lovely. So, like, here's what I think. Right? I showed it to a student, and he basically confirmed his earlier opinion that I'm certifiably insane. But this works. I mean, that, to me, that's exactly what is going on here. In the second dance, which is a waltz, some of that is still true. They're still quite different characters. Into the next one. That's sort of my own vision, but that required some careful fingering. And of course we have big legato jumps, but hopefully by this age, octave jumps are no longer a thing, or not as big of a thing. The third dance, I think, is the hardest, but also it's so much fun. To me, it makes fun of like 3 different things all at once. So in the beginning part of this third dance is some kind of like a little Baroque gavotte or something. But then he makes fun of not one but 2 different Chopin etudes. So the thirds, and you know, the man must have been quite traumatized early in his life. So the piece is just so much fun. And so when we come to the etude bits, I think it makes sense to use some of the same techniques as we would use in the aforementioned etude. So for example, when we're doing the part that looks like the thirds, I do the same sort of department fingerings that I would do in the thirds etude, where I slide finger number 2, otherwise you run out of fingers, right? And when doing this business, you know, that makes fun of the A minor. To me, that's the same idea, is where you have to make sure that your weight is feeling like it's pulled up, otherwise you're gonna die. Or like this part of your arm is gonna die. So. Hardest one, start this one first. That's sort of the best advice that I can give. Also, if you want some of my trick fingerings, I can share those too. Okay. So we're back to Johann Sebastian Bach, to a prelude and fugue that of course everybody knows, but do they? Right? So let's start by discussing the prelude. I'll just put a little bit of it. Everybody knows this guy. And so on and so forth. So, what do I hate the most when I hear this performed? allow it to become a Hammond exercise. So I'm thinking that there are levels of ideas that we can come up with. Let's start with the micro level first. So everything here is in these groups of 4, connected by beams, right? That's just how we write music so that we don't get lost in the measure. But that's not how music actually goes. It doesn't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, it can, but it doesn't in this case. Because we know that here, every phrase begins on the second 16th note. It says 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So once we begin to divide the music into these groupings that start on the second 16th note, we start making decisions. So is our grouping really 4 notes? Or is it maybe 8 notes? Ooh, if we think of it like that, look at what just happened. It went up in this beautiful way. Next grouping. So it's a little bit less up. How fascinating. Not up at all. And it ends so nicely. And as you go through the piece, perhaps not every grouping is 8 notes. Perhaps some are 4, perhaps some are 12. I don't know. It depends on how you see the thing. So once you've done the micro, and I usually like to start, from the micro and go to the macro, but some people think the other way. So on the macro level, you must divide pieces like that into sections or phrases according probably to the harmony. Right? And there's more than one way that each person might decide how to divide it, but it is unbearable to hear the whole thing as a stream of 16 notes. So we can think even more options are possible. So articulation in the right hand. There's so many options. Of course, Bach says nothing, but it can be with a beautiful overlapped legato. How lovely. Harpsichordists work so hard on creating a legato like that. So that's one option. What about? Oh, how beautiful. All of these are options. And perhaps you don't have to keep to the same articulation to the whole piece either, because, boring. And then we can also consider the left hand. There are so many options in the left hand. For example, I sort of decided in the first line that some notes are more important than others. Cool. Maybe you don't like that. Freedom, right? You can do whatever you like, but it makes sense to analyze the left hand, because in some sections everything changes all the time. In other sections that are marked, on the 3rd and 4th systems, we've got an ostinato going, or a pedal point going, or something like that. It must mean something different, right? Perhaps you might want to change articulation. And as for articulation, do we have maybe, or is it more like, right? It depends what you decided in the right hand. The important thing that the articulation cannot be random. You have to think it through. You have to give it a color and an attitude. Right? The color shouldn't be gray, right? Some other color. And now things get even more fascinating with the famous fugue. understood that the value of the dot is up to the performer. So a dot means make the note longer. How much longer? It depends. There are many Bach-Gs which are written as dotted rhythms, but are actually played as triplets. So there, the dot is shorter. In a piece like this, which is a French overture, the dotted note is far, far longer. So French overture, of course, and I tried to provide a beautiful picture of that. Opera was born in Italy, but then it moved right away to the royal court in France. So you have to imagine yourself in Versailles. Opera is going to be done, and people are making a lot of noise. They're busy doing their courtier things. And then the king comes in, and the violins go ta-dam, 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 and everybody knows this is the moment to sit down, be quiet, and let the opera really begin. So French overture. If I hear a straight dotted rhythm in performance, I'm not going to penalize the student, but historically informed performance practice will tell you that you must overdot. Now, did you notice that I didn't overdot all of the dotted notes? So this business, this sounds stupid if you overdot it. I mean, possible, but I don't like it. As I said, the value of the dot is whatever the performer wants it to be. The important thing here is that we're creating one character for this subject and completely different character for everything else. Right? Okay. On to the Beethoven. Oh, I guess I was explaining all that. Okay, so this is probably the most famous Beethoven movement that our kids who've got good fingers enjoy playing. I won't play too much of it. I don't enjoy it. I mean, too hard. We all know this piece. Okay. So, things to think about here is that when Beethoven was writing this, the piano was changing. Right? It was changing quite rapidly, and a lot of piano manufacturers were putting on instruments with really quite different technology. I remember coming across an advertisement, it's slightly earlier than this piece. It was written of one of the piano manufacturers who says their bass register sounds like a bassoon. Right, so our modern piano, the bass register certainly does not sound like a bassoon. It sounds like a cello or a bunch of cellos. Right? So to create a true, sharp, beautiful sound in the bass is quite an undertaking. And as promised, here's sort of my idea of how to achieve staccato. So I think there are two quite equally lovely ways to achieve staccato, and it depends on the person's hand, which one works better for them. Way number one is to place the finger on the key, pretend that there's a bug on the key, and flick the bug off. Okay, I like using the bug, it works on a little one. On big ones, you can say you can scratch the piano. The attack is very fast. This is a marvelous articulation, but the hand does not love it. It's difficult and has to be practiced a great deal. The second way that creates a very different but still very short, sharp, and beautiful sound in staccato is almost the exact opposite, where I suggest actually locking all the joints starting from the bridge and poking the note into the key. That's really cool, right? In both cases though, you have to start from the surface of the key. Most students, when they see staccato, if they see staccato at all, we're going to get something like this. That's just slapping the keys. That is not a staccato. So this piece is very difficult and requires a very great deal of very careful practicing. If you cannot achieve the perfect staccato in the left hand, pick something else. It's just that hard. So the romantic piece on this level is another one of my big favorites, and I'm actually in fact planning to eventually learn it and start performing it because it's just so very lovely. And it's variations by Michael Glinka. Glinka is not very well known in the West, but of course a household name back in Russia, such was his importance. This piece, it has every kind of romantic articulation, mood, character, technique that you can possibly think of, and it's just lovely. Faster and more interesting and technically challenged. So I think the hardest challenge here is finding that theme as the variations go on. I think it's very important to be able to hear the variations as belonging to the theme. So I've already started a student on this, and when I asked him to find the theme in variation 1, I got so I sort of went through and did it for him. It gets more and more challenging as we go, but extremely important because you're not playing 6 independent pieces. You're playing a theme and variations. Right? These are not ornamental variations, granted, but still, you should be able to hear the theme. And then there's, of course, this lovely romantic character that must be maintained throughout. Did you see my arm? I don't want to talk about it the 5th time now today, but the concept is always the same. We phrase using the arm, we do not phrase with our hand, with our fingers, because the sound is not natural. And now with the last piece, we're going to have a problem again, because I was completely unable to learn this one, and I have another one of these little things that don't work, I'm guessing. Wow, I don't even see I literally don't even see the play button. It's a mystery. So I'm finding this piece extremely hard. So let's talk about Stravinsky a little bit. Stravinsky, to me, is a lot like Picasso. A lot like Picasso in the sense that every style, he tried every style and created something beautiful in all the styles that he attempted. So this is a very young Stravinsky indeed. So the style here is like mature, slightly overripe romanticism. I find this extremely difficult. Even though it is slow, my brain just was not able to process it. The piece is so beautiful. It has that late romantic harmony, which is so rich and just like edible, with even a little bit of impressionism thrown in. The difficulty, of course, is look at all of that left hand articulation. Fingering it so everything is legato is not a small task. In the right hand, so it's not impossible that somebody can reach this with a straight 1, 2, 3, 5 fingering. I certainly cannot. So the only way I can possibly finger this is 2, 1, 2, 5. Right, so that's kind of as far as I got in this piece, and then my brain exploded, and that was pretty much that. So the recording that I'm recommending here, I suggest you write it down. Beautiful. It was my favorite of all the ones that I heard. Something so natural about it. So somebody has learned the piece, I mean all of them. But it's another piece where you need to start right away. And again, this is for somebody who likes weird, because these harmonies are super weird. Okay, so now that we are at the end, now it's time for Q&A. So concerns and arguments. in my
How many
opinion.
variations does the Klinka has?
I believe it's 6.
6.
I've only learned the first 2 so far.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's because I have 3 different concert programs to maintain. They are all 2 lines long, so the piece is reasonable in length, and I think reasonable in difficulty. I just sort of ran out of time to learn.
I just have a question about the prelude and fugue in Kavalevsky. Is there an opus number? I never missed that. It's beautiful.
It is. There is an ensemble. Let me just cycle back to it.
Don't forget, I included all the books where you can find it.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's on the
yeah.
website.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
Belsky's in copyright still, so that you can't find it legally on IMSLP.
Yeah, this one I don't know, but it's on
You
the,
sent this one to me.
yeah, but it's in the book,
Well, I mean, somebody paid royalties then
the
to put it.
Joy
I'm
of
still learning.
Contemporary
I'm
Music.
Mr. Vinsky.
Yeah,
It's Opus 61, number 1.
That's the Kavalevsky.
yes.
Excuse me, I had a question on the Scarlatti. Did that have a key number? I couldn't read it.
Yes, for obvious reason. That way I'm going wrong way for
It
Scarlatti.
was L number, I'm not sure if there's a K as well.
Okay.
I'm sure
There
I
was
found
some
it.
number.
I found the K number. Yes, it's K63.
K63?
Yeah, K63.
It's
Okay.
Because it's.
number 3 of the
Yeah.
etudes, yeah.
Mm.
Oh,
Yeah. It's all over internet.
Yeah, no,
Thankfully,
no, no, no.
Scarlatti is out of copyright and very easy
And
to
then
find.
on the Haydn, you had one number, but when I was looking in my
Yeah,
Haydn this
I
morning, I couldn't
confused
find
it
that
with-
one. I mean, there's so many.
No, but I
Um,
think this number should work. Hoboken 1528. It's just I think maybe that sonata is not that known.
It's
No,
the last movement.
Oh, I know it's the last movement, but I was looking through them quickly this morning, but I couldn't find it. Okay,
I
I'll
will-
look.
Yeah, I can send you all the copies if you would.
Oh,
But I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
all of
it's
them.
Haydn, so.
Yeah,
you
no,
should-
I'll find it.
Right.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
one shouldn't be a problem. It's the pieces on the A and B levels that are so hard to
Oh, I
find.
know. Yes.
Yeah, but they're all from American editions. I didn't look through my old books, no.
Yeah, and I have the text, so that's what I was looking at, yeah.
The
okay.
Shostakovich, the 3 fantastic dances, how long is it? Or how many pages?
They're each 2 pages long. They're teeny tiny.
Each are 2
Each
pages.
are 2
long.
pages.
Okay.
And then they
And
each
as I
have
said,
about,
they repeat like crazy. If you learn one
Yeah.
page, you basically
Okay.
have both. I mean, they change by the
It's
end.
doable.
ABA.
and they each have about 4 measures that are really hard.
Honestly, I think it's getting the character that's really hard. It's getting them to dance that's really hard. Also, I don't know about your students, but mine, they see anything that was written past, let's say, 1850 and start complaining. So you have to kind of like threaten and, bribe. But so far, I'm not having any trouble with the Shostakovich. The kids do like it.
Yeah.
Especially when I show them my froggy picture. I think that's just so delightful.
Yeah, that's actually a question I had for you. Which pieces have you found were the favorites of kids you've been teaching?
I haven't started the little ones yet on the repertoire because the NWSMT, the Sonata Sonatini Festival is like in a week, and not a single person has their sonata memorized. Not a single one, and I'm leaving, and it is what it is. So I haven't been able to, and I don't raise my voice, and and maybe I should. Maybe things would go better. But for now, I'm adoring the Nakada Etude, which is the required piece on the B.
I taught like 90% of all the pieces, that's why I included them.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it's not like something weird or.
So honestly, the only one I seriously started teaching is the level D one, just because he doesn't want to do no sonata. So
Which one did you take?
I picked.
Yeah.
Sometimes it pays to be a tyrant. He's doing my Glinka.
Yeah.
He's a very expressive sort of a player.
Yeah, I also want to, I forgot to mention that in every level, I try to include the pieces not exactly of the same level of difficulties.
Right.
You cannot find it
Right.
like that.
I mean, I thought,
Especially if the
I think
kids
it's
are-
important to know which is
Yeah.
the hardest one,
Right.
so that if you have somebody
Exactly.
who just squeaking into a level, you can avoid it. Like
Right.
the Bach little prelude on
Mhm.
A is very difficult. I think the Beethoven sonata is super hard.
Right, but you also have time. If you can teach the whole repertoire, all 5 pieces,
Right.
to especially level A and B.
That's kind of what I'm hoping to
start
be
now,
doing.
and then you keep whatever is better.
Mhm.
I'd like to make a comment though. I guess the students are getting better and better and better. Because I know that like maybe 10, 15 years ago, I mean, if you threw the music on the floor, you could tell which one was A, B, C, or D. But on this set, I don't think I could do it. You know, there's, the level of difficulty is narrow, more narrow than it has been. I mean, it's
I don't think so, but I think it's hard because she chooses unknown repertoire to
Right.
spice it up. That's why I think.
But I mean, once you start playing it, you recognize that some things are not as hard as they sound. Like the etude is much easier than it sounds. On the same level, the waltz is much easier than it looks, right? So there are things which are, you know, workable. Also, don't forget, we can put kids of who are much older than you would think are appropriate. Like I have a later starter beginner who I'm gonna probably put in B, even though she's complaining a little bit about it. But I don't think she can handle C, for example. So honestly, I'm not convinced she can handle B. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I can't put her in A. It's a little bit, you know. I mean, we don't want to lose students over inappropriate placement.
But just the preparation, it's good.
Right. And I mean, I do have some kind of bright little ones, like 9-year-olds, that I put them in B, but they probably should be in C. And I think maybe if they're maybe it's less challenging, that they'll do kind of a better job and not freak out, and they can do more repertoire. I mean, you have to go on a case by case, right? And you know, you have moms to argue with, because we know some moms say like D level for my 6-year-old. I said no, but like, do they really listen? You know, the kids are gonna listen to the mom and are gonna cry in the lesson that you're not giving them non-challenging stuff. I mean, I'm gonna cry in the lesson because they can't play, you know, what they want.
Well, I hate to say it, but I think we need to wrap it up.
Right.
You have to go. Yeah, people want to see her. We're still talking.
Svetlana, thank you so much. We've really enjoyed hearing all this music, and your insight into the
Thank you.
music is just really helpful.
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you.
Again, thank you, Regina, for giving us all this lovely music to work on. And maybe in the future the tech will work.